20 minutes. David Foote here with Jim Clark, who is the Chief Pro Scout for the Ottawa Senators. Thanks for taking some time for us, Jim.
My pleasure, Dave.
For those who may not be aware of what the job of the Chief Pro Scout entails, what does the job entail?
The job of any pro scout really for any organization is we basically scout the National Hockey League and the American League. We do some scouting in Europe as well for older free agents, guys playing in the men's professional leagues in Europe. And primarily we're there to make recommendations to our general manager with regards to any trades that occur during the course of the season. If we run into injury problems either at the AHL or the NHL level, then we'll get a call in terms of, positionally, this is what we need. Who can you recommend out there that we should go after? And then, of course, come the end of the season, July 1st is a busy time because there's so many free agents today at both levels. And that's really what we work towards all year long is free agency. And, of course, the trade deadline, which is usually around March the 1st of each year. So that's primarily my role. Is we've got 4 guys doing it full-time now, and all of those guys have a lot of experience. They've all been kicking around the league for the most part 25 years plus, and they don't need a lot of direction. I convene the meetings that we have 3 or 4 times a year. I coordinate their schedules if we're a little light in seeing certain teams, but for the most part, each guy's pretty independent. They know the job. They know what's expected, and as I said, if there's any loose ends, I just try to tighten them up a little bit.
Right. A lot of change, especially here in Belleville over the off-season. A lot of veteran guys, or a good chunk of veteran guys, brought in to add some depth to this team. What was the process like in trying to find those guys and target guys like the Paul Careys and the Chase Ballasys and the Joseph LeBates that really add the depth to this club?
Well, I think, the first thing is former AGM Randy Lee and Pierre, they have to decide which guys they want to bring back here in Belleville from last year's club and which guys they want to qualify that are restricted free agents. And we don't really get a clean slate of that probably till about the second week of June each year as to what we're really looking for when we come to free agency. We've already put our list together of guys at the minor league levels that we would see as either elite minor league players or guys that can add depth to the organization in terms of coming up to play games when we have injuries in Ottawa. So I think anytime you miss the playoffs a couple years in a row, you know you're going to have significant changeover in your roster. And this year we've added 6 or 7 guys either via trades or via the free agency market, and we tried to pinpoint positionally, where we were thin. We tried to bring in as best we can good character guys that we know have had quality time in the American League that can fill a void for us, provide some leadership for our young players. We knew we'd have a lot of young kids coming out of junior and college ranks this year and again next year. And so really, when you look at Joe LeBate or when you look at a Paul Carey, even Tambellini, I mean, these guys in particular, I think we thought Carey and Tambellini for sure would be guys that Carey played most of last season in the NHL. We knew he was a good depth guy. We felt Tambellini had the skill set to contribute at the NHL level if needed, and at minimal would be a good, probably a good second-line player at this level. And Joe LeBate had a bit of an off year last year due to some injuries, so we thought he had something to prove, and with a big body, we wanted to, we thought he could come in here and play a real good role in our bottom 6 forwards, and again, possibly if he could get back to the form he showed 2 years ago in Utica, give us games if we need them up top in Ottawa. So it's just a process of identifying where the holes are, and whether you're looking for a skill set, whether you're looking for a hard worker that brings some size, and maybe the most important thing for us this year in terms of the free agency market was finding an established veteran minor league goaltender that we knew was a good quality person that, he still, like if you look at Mike McKenna, he still wants to play the game. He's going to give you a chance to be in the game each and every time he takes the net. and you also know that he's a good mentor. We got 2 young guys that were high on as prospects, Gustafson and Holberg. But the best, for me in particular, I mean, the best way to develop your kids is to provide them a chance to win every night. So you really need at this level a mature, experienced American League guy that's done it before. And we know what kind of year Mike had last year with Texas.
Yeah, you read my mind. I was going to ask about Mike McKenna, and I think some people from the outside look at the quality of the young goaltenders. You have both Gustafson and Hogberg are solid goaltending prospects, but I think there's a lot to be said for having a guy like Mike McKenna there to be steady day to day, to not only help those guys, but as you said, give a good backbone for the team as a whole to help make them successful.
Yeah, well, when you have a guy like Mike there, I mean, your back end know if they make a mistake, more often than not, he's going to bail them out so they can play with a little more confidence. And for your young goalies, despite all the skill they have, goaltending is such a mental game, and it takes a long time for that to really evolve and to find a guy that becomes a really consistent goalkeeper. And I think with Mike there, he could talk to the kids on those nights when they're not good and probably get their head around it and get them back into mentally being confident the next time they take the net. You know?
Yeah, and he's told us that as well, that he's extremely comfortable playing that kind of mentor role with young goaltenders, which is so crucial. Before we let you go, you mentioned filling the depth chart for when you run into injuries and things like that. It's been a bit of a wild season, both here and in Ottawa. How much more work does that add to you and your staff when you're dealing with so many injuries like that?
Well, unfortunately, we're a team right now. You're allowed 50 contracts as an organization. We're close to that number. Sean McCauley, who kind of took hold of things here this summer, and our new assistant GM, Peter McTavish. I mean, it's important as well. I mean, we have the affiliation with Brampton, the East Coast League, so obviously a few guys have been put on contracts at that level, such as Boschman here tonight, that we know can come up and fill holes here when it's almost like a dominoes effect. I mean, somebody goes down up top, you lose a player here, and all of a sudden we're thin in Belleville, and we need to know that Brampton have 3 or 4 guys that we can access to come in here and play for us as long as required and not miss a beat, at this level. So the job really never ends because we don't know when somebody's going down and when we're going to get the call from management as to, okay, who do we go after now?
Right on. Well, thanks so much for this, Jim. Appreciate the insight.
Yeah, no, my pleasure, Dave.
Jim Clark is the Chief Pro Scout with the Ottawa Senators. We'll be back with the out-of-town scoreboard for Mackey Insurance and the second period on the way from CAA Arena as well. It's Senators hockey on 800 CJBQ.